Hello and welcome back to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about The Romans by Dennis Spooner, directed by Christopher Barry. Now this story has a bit of a stigma behind it because a lot of people don't like this one because it's a comedy. It plays itself mainly for laughs, and personally I don't mind the comedy elements in this story, but we'll get into it more deeply. The reasoning behind this is that Verity Lambert, the first Doctor Who producer, decided to mix things up a bit. A lot of rumours is that it was Dennis Spooner who came up with the comedy idea after he wrote The Reign of Terror, but no, it was Verity Lambert's the idea to make a comedy episode, which, by the way, this is 4 parts long. To start off, this story has our TARDIS team in Roman times. However, unlike most stories, usually, surprisingly, they've been here for a month at least. They explain that when we first see them, they're already like in Roman gowns and they're eating like Roman food. And they explain that the house that they're living in, yes, they're living in a house, is this guy. He gave the house to them to look after. So it was a very unusual start to the story, but it's great to see our TARDIS team with such joyful personalities in here. There's a great bit where Ian is having a little banter with the Doctor about something, and the Doctor gets his name wrong, and Barbara corrects him, but then the Doctor's like, "Oh, Barbara's calling you." That was just a very funny line. They all treat it like it's like a lovely holiday, and there's a great funny bit where Ian and Barbara, they're eating food and stuff, and they're having a drink, and Ian is like, "It'd be nice to have some ice with this," and Barbara goes, "Yeah, there's some ice in the fridge," and Ian goes to the fridge until he realises there is no fridge. They're in Roman times, and they have a giggle about it, and it's just something about the warm atmosphere at the start of the story just really works, especially now that we have new companion Vicky in the story. We first see Vicky in the story with Barbara, and you can definitely tell she's a lot different from Susan. They make it vitally clear. When Barbara decides to kind of sit down in a bit, Vicky, she is just full of adventure, and she does kind of put Barbara down a bit when she is saying that, like, when she thought about travelling with the Doctor, she didn't realise there would be so much sitting and waiting. She's eager to get something done, and yeah, she is different from Susan a lot. Susan wouldn't act like this, and it is great to see that they did try to give her own personality, her own traits. We discover then that the Doctor is going to Rome by himself, and Ian and Barbara were going to think that they should all stick together, but the Doctor's like, "No, you go and stay here and have a holiday." But Vicky really wants to join the Doctor because she's out there and thing, and I love their relationship here. The Doctor here is pure giddy. He does his famous thing that he does. I think this is the most times he does it. He is like a much more cheerful version of himself, and I especially like it when they're in Rome and a lot of people, when he annoys him, he's just like so dismissive of him. It's hilarious. So Vicky and the Doctor head to Rome, but however they find a dead body with like an instrument. It's not a violin, it's something like a Roman version. And they realise that this guy kind of looks like the Doctor. And a Roman soldier then is like looking around the bushes, and the Doctor then, because he doesn't want the soldier to believe that obviously he was a murderer, said that he is the guy he was looking for, Maximus, and that he's going to help him take Maximus to Rome. But the Doctor is not Maximus. And there's a great funny line where goes back to Barbara, not back to Barbara, he goes back to Vicky to tell her what's happened, and she is like, you, this plan's not going to work, you don't even know your own name, and the doctor, they like kind of turns near to the camera and is like, before the soldier calls him out, Maximus, and I don't know, I just thought it was very, so yeah, the comedy elements really shine out here. I can see it's not as atmospheric as, say, the Daleks or the Rescue, but however, I like the theme here, especially how we've had a lot of darker stories, a lot of bleak stories. It is a very nice change of pace. However, saying that the story isn't bleak might be not as right as thought. As Ian and Barbara get kidnapped by these slave traders and held as slaves, and my God, Barbara and Ian just can't get a break, can they? Pretty early on they're separated, which is very unusual. We rarely see these two characters by themselves. They're always at least teaming up with one other TARDIS companion, especially themselves. So to see them split up, especially how Barbara is very determined, is very attached to Ian, you really do feel bad for them. And then their stories kind of split as somebody buys Barbara and makes her part of Nero's slaves, whilst Ian is being given to a shipment and has been forced to row the boats. Now, I'm going to have to say, Ian's part in this, I thought, was extremely dull. He befriends another crew member, and they go off on their own little adventures, and it's where the most action of the story comes from. So if that's kind of like, I can see why people might like his part of the story, but for me it did kind of drag, especially when not much plot character development from his story angle was being explored here. However, like I've said in like previous of a bunch of these stories, I really like the pacing of Classic Who, especially how with these big TARDIS crews, they split them up and the story switches between them. As Barbara becomes a worker for Nero and his wife, and here is where a lot of complaints come into about Nero. Let's talk about Nero, shall we? So Nero is played by Drake Francis. Now he, back in the 60s and the 50s, was a huge comedy actor, especially in the Carry On films, and a lot of people, and he's one of the first big stars in Doctor Who, and he was actually the first actor who requested that he would be on the show. He became a fan. He was a fan of the show, and he actually knew Jacqueline Hill's husband, and through his connections got himself the role of Nero in Doctor Who. And he's clearly over the top, and he clearly plays it for laughs with his big bulging eyes and constantly like this, and he's constantly being childish. Historically, Nero might have not even been like that. A lot of like stigma has come around about Nero and his time as ruler in Rome. However, historians are mostly agreeant that Nero was actually a pretty decent ruler who actually did care for his citizens, for his people, and it was the politicians who didn't like him that much, and so started like a anti-Nero campaign. In fact, one of the big elements of this story, which we will get into, might not be most historically accurate, but we'll get into that. Back to Nero. He takes a sort of fancy to Barbara. When I say fancy, I don't mean like I mean he's a full-on bloody, like, oh god, there's scenes where he's chasing her around the castle, fucking Benny Hill style. I was almost expecting to hear the Benny Hill theme playing. And Barbara is just very uncomfortable around him. And there's a great scene where he kind of pulls Barbara onto him on the bed, but his wife comes in and he kind of pushes her off to the floor and is like, "Oh, I didn't see you there. Are you alright on the floor?" And then you see her like, "Get out of the way. I don't need my wife to know about this." So, yeah, he's not really portrayed very, very good here. I am 50-50. I can see why people don't like him. He's stubborn, he's childish, he's played really over the top by Drake, and most of all, he's basically trying to groom as many women as he can. But on the other hand, I think it's played for laughs. It's not meant to be taken seriously, and the story does its best of when it is doing these, putting him in terrible situations, as if he is the terrible person, not that he is the innocent one. So I kind of see both points of view. I don't know why I'm doing that with the box, but there you go. So back to Doctor and Vicky. They go into the palace of Nero. Now, there's some great scenes where they almost meet. There's a great scene actually where as they enter Rome, they see people getting up on the stage, and the Doctor's like, "Come along, Vicky," and they walk off. And just as they walk off, Barbara comes onto the stage just before she gets bought by Nero's men, and it does that a lot, and there's a lot of comedy elements into it, but it's not really. It's like a full-blown comedy. There's like especially with Ian, there's a lot of dramatic, bleak moments in this. It's very, very bizarre. However, when the Doctor and Vicky get to Nero's palace, they befriend a man who is coming up with this conspiracy with Maximus, the guy that the Doctor's impersonating. And these are the scenes I was talking about earlier where he calls Maximus by like hissing at him, like, "Psst, shh, Maximus, over here." And the Doctor's like, "Oh no, not you again. What do you want now, you're silly old man?" So I do really like those scenes. And when he meets Nero, it is full blown. When it's the Doctor and Nero, it is a full blown comedy. Like when they first meet, obviously Nero being a high Roman leader, everybody has to be like prim and proper and stuff. And the Doctor speaks out a turn, and Nero is like, "Did I give you permission to speak? Did I give anyone permission to speak? Did you hear me giving me permission to speak?" Very, very silly and over the top. So you can see why a lot of people don't like this story. And it's mainly just that until we get up to the final episode. It's whilst this goes on, they held a concert for Maximus, the Doctor, for the music he's playing. However, the music that the instrument the Doctor can't actually play, and there's a great bit where his great plan is that he says that only the people with the greatest of hearing could hear this piece of music, and he plays, but nobody can hear anything. He's pretending, and it's such a great like doctory thing to do, like smartest way out of it. Like he can't play it, and he's put in this difficult situation, and so he figure a way out. That was very cool. However, Nero isn't happy about this, so he kind of grabs Barbara by the arm and tells her that they're going to the Colosseum so he can watch some people get murdered. Hooray! Yeah, that's Nero's. You can see the childishness of Nero there. And when he summons the two slaves to battle in the Colosseum, one of them turns out to be Ian. And Ian fights this guy and he loses the fight. And Nero puts his thumb down and it's like, "Cut his head off." And the knife comes up, and that comes up to our cliffhanger. One of our cliffhangers. Now, speaking of action scenes, I forgot to mention, earlier on in the story, an assassin is hired to kill Maximus, but it's actually the Doctor here. And we get a short fight scene, very reminiscent of John Pertwee. We even get the Doctor kind of karate flipping the guy, and he easily beats him. Especially how we saw the Doctor kind of like fight, but not very well in the last story. It is very strange to see him basically kicking ass, taking names and kicking ass in this story. I just wanted to bring that back up. So back to where we were. The slave puts the sword up to go and cut off Ian's head. He trembles, he looks at Nero, and he goes running up to Nero, and before you could even get to him, all the guards come out, and Ian and this guy have to fight. And Barbara is like, Ian, I can't get free, you gotta help me. And Ian is like, I'll save you later. And he buggers off because of all the tension of all the soldiers. He couldn't save her life. So back to the Doctor and Vicky, we get more seeds of comedy as he talks to Vicky befriends a woman who makes poison, and there's a great scene where she explains that somebody wants someone dead, which turns out to be Barbara, but Vicky doesn't know that. So what she does is she switches the poisons around, so it's Nero's cup. But then when the Doctor finds out, it's like, obviously Nero survives during this time, so he has a bit of banter with Vicky. It's not gone into detail about changing history than with the Aztecs, which is a bit of a shame. This could have been Vicky's moment, the Aztec moment, but sadly not. It's mainly played for laughs, as the Doctor talks to Nero just before he drinks the poison, and he saves his life, and the Doctor walks off. And Nero, what he does is he sees somebody he doesn't like, one of his men who's been following him around trying to give him fancy clothes and stuff, and tells him to drink it, and then he drinks it and falls off and dies. And he just turns to the camera, it's like, he was right. And just buggers off, and it's just like, he didn't care. But yeah, so I personally found that really funny, that bit. A lot of people don't. A lot of people find it all, the whole comedy elements, especially with Barbara chasing scenes with Nero, and how it's very Benny Hill-ish. Benny Hill-ish, that's a word. It does have a lot of comedy. You know, it has a lot of comedy that really ruins the more serious aspects of the story. I mean, this is the Romans, and yet it's played as a spoof. So there you go. However, as Nero didn't hear the Doctor play, he gets very angry, and so what he does is he plans Maximus to play in a Colosseum for where he will get attacked by lions. But Barbara, as they don't know who knows who, tells her friend, the guy, one of the guys that she's befriended there, what's happening, and this guy then tells the Doctor, it's the guy that was been telling the Doctor about this conspiracy, that he's going to get attacked by lions, and if Maximus wants to kill Nero, you'll have to do it tonight. And then the Doctor's like, wait, what? Killing Nero? What's this? What? And so that's a bit of a funny element. And then later on, then he's reading part of Nero's plan for changing the landscape of Rome. Now, we'll have to get a little history lesson later on in this, but anyway, he hears Nero coming up towards him, and so he takes his glasses off, and and Nero is telling him about that he should play in the Colosseum, without telling him that he's going to get attacked by lions, obviously. But the Doctor kind of like suggests that he already knows. He's just like, oh, of course. Nero says, I've got a surprise for you. Can you guess what it is? And the doctor's like, let me think. You want me to play in the Colosseum? And it's like, what? You guessed? I don't like it when people guess my surprise. And then the doctor's like, I want something that people could grip their teeth into. A roaring success. And it's going to be my greatest final curtain call. And whilst this is happening, whilst his glasses are behind him, the sunlight burns the map. And Nero grabs it up and it's like, you fools, you ruined my plans! And they send the guards over to him and he's like, he's gonna execute them. But then he's like, looks at the fire and he's like, you geniuses, you geniuses! I've just come up with a brilliant plan. And he kind of like panters, walks off. And the guards then let the doctor and Vicky leave, and so they leave. And Nero decides then to burn Rome so he can start the new empire that he wants to build. Now, in history, there was a lot of rumours that he was the one who started the fire because he wanted to build his own city, which he did later on. However, a lot of historians have since said that that is false. I don't know whether they knew that when this story was made. For starters, a lot of people think that Nero was neglective of his power, and he didn't want anything to do with the citizens and treated them more like garbage, basically. But however, that's not true. He's actually remembered fondly by his peers. It was the politicians who didn't like him. And when the fire had burnt out, he actually opened his doors and let people through. And the city that he did build was miles away from where the fire started. So it's very unlikely that was the case. However, in this story anyway, he gets a bunch of slaves, one of them being Ian, and he, even though Ian escaped, he kind of went undercover as another slave and went into Nero's empire, hiding behind all the others, so he can get away with it. So Nero sets them all to go on a fire, but the guy that's been helping our TARDIS team has been telling Ian that he's basically been helping Barbara, and Barbara and him unite, and they leave Rome, and they see, and it cuts to the Doctor and Vicky looking at the fire of Rome. Now, here's another thing that you might not know. The actual fire, the burning down of Rome, might not have been that bad. I mean, as far as historical evidence suggests, yes, the fire lasted for 6 days. However, only about 2 or 3 accounts of it actually were talked about in description, in the literature and stuff. And even then, they explained that the fire was basically no big deal, taking only 0.007% of the main Rome. So we've got this massive dramatic historical based on a very small aspect of history. So there you go. And there's a great bit where the Doctor and Vicky are looking at the flames, and Vicky is laughing to herself because it's like, you told me to not interfere with history, but you were the one who technically gave the idea about burning Rome to Nero. And the Doctor's like, what? No, I didn't. He could have got an idea anywhere. And then he kind of turns away and he's like, it was me, technically. And he's giggling to himself as if he was part of history. So, I could see, this is what I mean, when I can see where people are coming from and I hate it. Where with previous historicals, there's been a huge focus on trying to not change history at all. Kind of keep things as they are. But here it's very loose and tongue-in-cheek, with the Doctor seeming being alright with the fact that he's thought of being the one to change it. The story, pantomime. That's a great way to explain the story. It's very pantomime-y. And I think if you like a pantomime story, I think it really works well here. But I will admit it's not for everyone. And so Ian and Barbara get to where they were originally first. And then the Doctor and Vicky come in and they explain that they had this great adventure where they disguise themselves as musicians and worked for Nero. And before Ian can get a word about his adventure, the Doctor's like, I don't want to hear about you people lazing about. And it's just, it's just a huge laugh, a huge giggle, and that's how our story ends. So, what did I think about the romance? I've done a lot of how other people think, but what do I feel? I'm kind of 50-50. I think it's entertaining. It's not boring. It has a lot of fun elements. However, it's not deep. There's no deep character lessons here. There's no deep moral values here. It's just a tongue-in-cheek pantomime. But I think as a cheap pantomime, it is very enjoyable. Ian and Barbara, their stories were a bit dull, but when it's ever the Doctor and Vicky, the story really does light up. And you can see that Vicky is actually a really great choice. And maybe this story has changed my mind that she is an underrated companion. So there you go, that's the romance. I'll see you next time where we go to one of the most strangest and bizarre Doctor Who stories of all time, the Web Planet. I'll see you all next time on the Doctor Who Marathon.